and welcome to This is USG, a video podcast by the universities at Shady Grove. 9 universities, 1 campus, great results. I'm Ann Kademian, Executive Director of the universities at Shady Grove. Tonight, it is an honor to have the President of the University of Baltimore, Kurt Schmoke, as our guest. President Schmoke's remarkable and impactful leadership experience is defined by inspirational vision, innovative solutions, and a deep understanding of the challenges confronting communities and the policies that can change lives. Whether a student leader at Yale University, the mayor of Baltimore, dean of the Howard University School of Law, or today president of the University of Baltimore, President Schmoke has always inspired others to find their voice and their strength through education and to seek solutions through thoughtful collaboration. Tonight, we will learn more about his leadership, about UB, and we will explore the challenges faced by higher education in the time of COVID-19 and during a period of racial reckoning and the fight for social justice. President Schmoke, welcome to This is USG.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kademian. It really is a pleasure, and I have only visited USG a couple of times during my presidency, but I look forward in this post-pandemic environment to visiting more and interacting with the students at the universities at Shady Grove.
We're looking forward to having you visit again very soon, and we'll take you on a tour of the new building and all kinds of fun things. So that'll be great. President Schmoke, let's start at the beginning, if you will. You know, I've been reading about your time at Yale University. You were a star athlete, football player, and quarterback, I think, and also a remarkable student leader at Yale at a very challenging time in the 1970s. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that time in your life and how that maybe shaped the path that you're on, that you took to become president of University of Baltimore, mayor of Baltimore. What was that time like for you in terms of your formative years and the path that you took?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, that that football side was the least distinguished part of my career. I had really enjoyed the high school football, but it was very clear that things were kind of tilted in my direction because I went to an all-boys high school in Baltimore City. We had 4 public schools that were single-sex, 2 all-boys, 2 all-girls. And so I was the quarterback of the high school football team, but there were 800 guys that came out for football. And so we had just an enormously talented team. I was able to get a scholarship, to go to Yale University. And, part of the deal was to play football. But my goodness, when I saw the level of talent there, I just didn't quite make it. But there were so many other wonderful things, doors of opportunity that the university opened up to me. And it is correct that it was some challenging times. We did have the Vietnam War going on, and in particular in New Haven, we had the trial of one of the Black Panther leaders, Bobby Seale. This occurred in the spring of 1970. It was before the tragic incidents at Kent State and Jackson State, but we did have big demonstrations right at the university with National Guard and things like that. But prior to all that occurring, I had been involved in some activity with students addressing the needs of dining hall workers at the university. We thought in particular, we heard in particular that some of the dining hall workers were having problems with childcare, and the university didn't have childcare at the time. So we were students. We said, we'll figure it out, and there ought to be childcare at Yale. And I got a good friend of mine who was an alumnus who was a great football player, named Calvin Hill. This generation probably knows his son, Grant Hill, who was a basketball player at Duke, and of course in the NBA. But Calvin agreed to allow us to use his name to organize and fundraise for a child care center. And so we created in the summer of 1970 at Yale the Calvin Hill Daycare Center, and it's still in operation. It is now celebrating its 51st year of operation, serving the needs of Yale employees. As it ends up now, most of them are not dining hall workers because most of those workers we found out actually had older children, so it served the administrative assistants and some others, but still for employees. And I learned a great deal through that process of, young people, if they get the encouragement, you have good ideas, a little encouragement from the administration, and some support of others can get things done. So I never felt as though we couldn't accomplish things, in the community. And that I feel, very proud of the fact that that institution, the Calvin Hill Daycare Center, it's now also a kindergarten, is still in existence.
Yeah, that's a great story. Must have been such an amazing feeling to be able to work together with all fellow students to pull something like that off. That's remarkable.
That's
So,
true.
I've also read a number of quotes by you about emphasizing that, education is the most impactful thing in
True.
your life. And,
Right.
you take that experience you had at Yale and the experience of really bringing transformative change to the campus and the emphasis on education. How do those two strengths, how do those two experiences shape the way you approach your role as leader, as the university president, but also as when you were mayor as
Yeah,
well?
yeah. Well, it really taught me a number of lessons. In particular, when I was mayor and we were trying to do something about the public schools, I always emphasized to people that regardless of where the children come from, what zip code, what income level, if you set standards high and agree and urge people to live up to something, they will come up to it. But if you look down on them or set the expectation level low, you're going to get what you're conveying. And so for me, I've just had the experience throughout my life of people being very encouraging. Although my parents were divorced fairly early, both of them were college graduates and both continued to talk to me about, going to college, finishing college. In and in as the university, as I mentioned, when I don't know how you would feel if a group of students came to you and said, Dr. Kadamian, we'd like to do X, Y. I'm sure you'd be very supportive and try to figure out how you could work with them. Well, that was my experience of people saying, okay, let's look and see how we can accomplish it, and not just a no. So it was conveying the lessons of, let's try to work together on these things that really did influence me as a leader in public sector. And then, of course, when I went to be dean at Howard and now president of the University of Baltimore.
Yeah, that's great. I read that you worked in the Carter White House
Yeah,
on domestic policy. And as mayor of Baltimore, just some really innovative things with empowerment zones and with different education policies. And
yeah.
did your time in the federal government inform some of the things you did as mayor? How did those two experiences relate to each other?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I did try to learn to take lessons from each of the experiences that you mentioned. Yeah, I worked on the Carter staff. I tell people I was on the junior varsity. I, I, I was one of the low level guys that worked for Stuart Eisenstadt, and also the person who actually helped get uh, the job for me was David Rubenstein, who's now gone on found be a co-founder of Carlisle, and in Washington, it's hard to go around without seeing a David Rubenstein supported building. But David's from Baltimore and been a good friend since high school. But to respond to your question, I learned the importance of finance. That's for sure, public finance. I learned also that from a personal experience working at the Carter White House, that I was more interested personally in the service level of government than in the policy, the federal policy level. Though once I became mayor, I found that you couldn't make that clear distinction that you were also involved in service delivery and policy. But learning about the intricacies of the budgeting process, dealing with legislators and things of that nature really helped me a great deal when I became an elected official myself. Because to run a city, a major American city, the resources come in really three different buckets, for local property taxes, state grants, and federal transfers. So you have to learn to deal with all three levels of government. And that early experience with the Carter administration helped me in that education.
That's great. Yeah. I Tell us a little bit about your time as mayor. 12 years you were mayor of Baltimore. That's
Well, my wife says 12 unindicted years.
yes. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, quite a remarkable time of leadership, and again, so many challenges and also so many wonderful accomplishments. I mean, what are your reflections on that time? What stands out for you during that time, and what are some of the things that you take away from that time that you maybe bring with you to this job?
Yeah. Well, again, just backing up a bit, I was law student, and I was working, and I've told people this story before, but it does impact how I worked as mayor. But growing up in Baltimore, a lot of people kept asking me, "What do you want to be when you grow up? When do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was really a nerdy little kid, and I said, "I'm gonna be mayor." I met Theodore McKeldin, who was mayor back in the 1950s. I was impressed with him. I didn't really know the job, but I just said, I want to be mayor. And then one summer, working as a law clerk, a senior lawyer at the firm that I was with asked me, what did I want to do with my law degree? And I said, I wanted to be mayor. And he said, Kurt, I didn't ask you what you want to be. I asked you what you want to do. And that was really, it stuck with me because, I said, my goodness, if somebody had just made me mayor right then, I didn't have a clue
Mhm.
about what I really wanted to do in the job. And so that started me really thinking about it. And as you know, my first elected position was state's attorney.
Mhm.
And I've recognized from that job how vitally important improving public education was, because I just saw so many people coming through the court system who really, if they had had the right education and opportunity early on, and the kind of encouragement that I talked about earlier that I had, I'm sure they wouldn't have been in the system. And so I ran knowing that I wanted to make some improvements in the education system. But of course, I recognized you couldn't just isolate the public schools. You had to do the libraries, you had to do community college, and commit everyone in the community to lifelong learning. Well, as you can see, that couldn't go on a bumper sticker. So my bumper sticker was to make Baltimore the city that reads. That was the slogan that I ran on, and I just talked about it. And when I became mayor, we put that on the truck, on the garbage trucks, on the park benches, on the city that reads. And the whole idea was just to let everybody know that the economy had changed so much that there were jobs out there, but they were jobs that required a higher level of education. than, let's say, 10, 20 years ago. When I graduated from high school, it was 1967. Largest private employer in the Baltimore region was the Bethlehem Steel Corporation Sparrows Point plant, steel mills.
Mhm.
When I became mayor 20 years later, 1987, the largest private employer, Johns Hopkins University and Health System. So there were jobs, but clearly they required a different level of education. And so um, I learned, as I said, a great deal from that state's attorney's experience, and tried to use some of the leadership experiences that I had learned about through other experiences before running for office, to try to bring people together, get a common vision about where we're going, and then encourage people to work together to achieve these common goals. That was the way in which I approached being mayor.
Yeah, and a wonderful time that it was when you were mayor. I know it was very challenging, but
Yeah.
remarkable leadership and accomplishments. You know, kind of moving up into your time in academia, it seems like there probably are very different kinds of worlds. You know, as
Yeah.
dean of the law school at Howard University, and also now president. Um, what do you see as the primary challenges in higher education right now? Are there similarities in terms of the challenges you faced as you're building coalitions, you're setting a vision, you're working with education is still front and center. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much you could draw on your time as mayor for your leadership in academia, and maybe how different it is. Like, what stands out as different for you in terms of
Sure, sure.
your academic
Well, I
leadership?
can tell you, particularly from my time as dean, when I would go to these conferences and people would ask me, what's the difference between being dean of the law school and being mayor of the city? And I said, well, uh, being mayor, you're dealing with a city council, and basically you get things done it's all about carrots and sticks. But the problem with being dean of the law school was that the carrots were too few and the sticks are too short. So that's the best way I could explain it. And but the idea, I had to learn a great deal. Learn what the idea of shared governance really means,
Mhm.
and so it's very different than in politics, though you have to build coalitions. But early on in true governance of the university, you've got to be transparent, got to touch base with a lot of different people, encourage folks to work with you. So there's some similarities, but there are also some differences. And right now, with the challenges we face, there's some that are purely financial. I mean, we want to make sure that people can complete degrees or certificates in a way that the debt that they carry does not affect the career choices that they make. So we try to have the most excellent standard of education at the lowest possible price for people. That's one. There are some challenges that the critics are saying that you don't need higher education anymore, and I think they're wrong. I think there's a role to play for various levels of education. Not everybody needs a 4-year degree. People do very well with 2 years. Some people want to just complete. They've already finished the degree. They want a certificate to enhance their expertise in an area. So I think there's a wide range of activities that higher education offers and has to fill. But we have to continue to explain that to people, and it is challenging for those who want to be negative about the higher education experience.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest challenges for higher education is coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're coming out of this, and everyone's getting vaccinated. And it's been such a hardship on, I know at USG, so many of our students have, the pandemic has really hit them hard with, you know, many have lost jobs, some housing insecurity, just even access to good technology and Wi-Fi so that they could continue on during the virtual. How under your leadership, from your perspective, what have been the biggest challenges for the University of Baltimore and your students during the pandemic, and are there lessons that you're taking from the pandemic that you think will inform your leadership in the university's work going forward?
Yeah. Well, clearly, I mean, you touched on one thing, the importance of high quality technology that is accessible to everybody and not just a few.
Mhm.
That's very important. We were fortunate not only with the federal government giving us some money through that CARES program, but we had some of our graduates who are now very successful business people who gave money to our foundation in support of students who needed laptops or the iPads and also hotspots and in order to address some needs at home. But we learn the value of in-person activity, though. How important it is for many of our students. So we will probably in the future continue with some mix of some in person and some online in order to meet the calendar, the scheduling needs of people. There are, we learned some lessons that we can provide some courses effectively, online, but others we really do need that in-person interaction. The law school, for example, is going to go back to being fully in person. Um, it for them, it was really a struggle
Mhm.
to convert to online. You've seen enough movies about professors in law school. You know how with the Socratic method, and it's tough to do, online, easier in person. And so we will be going back fully in person to on the law school in August. But others, about half of the academic credits for the fall semester will still be given online, and then we will move more and more in person as we get into the spring. But you're right, it has been quite a challenge. We have tried our best to meet the needs of students. We did set aside some rooms in the library and at the law school for people who really couldn't work at home. I mean, they either had little children or adults who they had to care for and they needed to get out a little bit. And so we did set aside a space for those kinds of needs. And I hope that people feel that we tried to meet their needs and put them first.
Yeah, yeah, we had many similar challenges here as well, and we're going to try to be as open as possible in the fall.
Yeah.
But things are changing rapidly as well. A lot of the guidance around COVID is changing rapidly. I wonder if we could shift a little bit and talk about the UB presence at university is at Shady Grove.
Right.
UB has been a strong partner at Shady Grove for a number of years, and some really wonderful programs. The simulation and game design
That's
program
right.
is one that's so popular, and I've met a few students in that program, just so impressed by the skill sets that they bring together for this program, from software design to visualization and graphic design and
Right.
systems engineering and all kinds of amazing skill sets. And then
And
of course health.
they have a very high level of employment. I mean,
Yes.
both private sector and public sector really love those graduates of that program.
Absolutely. You also have a wonderfully strong public administration program that's offered here. And which I'm really excited to see. My background is public affairs and public administration, and it's exciting to see that strong program here. I think there's a lot of room for growth in that program, and then health management, all kinds of things. Um, how do you see the partnership with USG? What's the kind of driving force or factor for the
Yeah.
University of Baltimore in your partnership with USG?
Well, as an elected official, as my students remind me, I was an elected official in the last century. It sounds so awful, but that's actually true. 87 to 99. But uh, the politics of the state at that time um, were so divided that Montgomery County and Baltimore City acted as though they were two separate planets moving around a sun. And so oftentimes we had to stop and say, wait a minute, we're one state. Our competition is not Central Maryland against the Washington suburbs, and so fortunately, over time, you had really outstanding leaders in both in the business community and academia and the elected officials that started talking about us as one state in competition internationally, not even just with Virginia, with some nearby states. So we see our role at University of Baltimore as being a partner with the largest county in the state, that we have something to offer in the fields that you're talking about that complement other work that's going on. And so it's it our motivation grows out of a sense of promoting a one state feeling. And I'm hoping that more and more students will look favorably at University of Baltimore programs that are at the universities at Shady Grove. And of course, I'm interested in recruiting people to do graduate work, to continue. So we only have two law schools in the state of Maryland, and we happen to have the one of them is at the University of Baltimore. So I'm always highlighting that as a distinction for us. And then we have the programs that I think fit the student profile that I see a great deal at the universities at Shady Grove. The average age of our undergraduates is 28. And then for the graduate programs, it's 32. So we see a lot of people who have started their higher education at community college, and then come to the 4 year, or they have been in the workforce for quite a while and want to come back to higher education. That's been our sweet spot since the University of Baltimore was established in 1925. I mean, we were established as a career-oriented university. We embraced that description of ourselves. We don't shy away from it. We do a lot of research, but we are a teaching institution and very much career oriented. And I just think we'd be remiss in our duties if we didn't offer and partner with people in the largest county in our state.
Well, we're certainly glad you do. It's great. It's great to have your programs here. And one of the things I've noticed at UB is your programming increasingly, especially when some of the new initiatives, they take a kind of a multidisciplinary approach
Right.
to the degree. And I really like your focus on, it's career oriented. It's also, there's a real strong sense of the applied of, problem solving. And I think that the focus on interdisciplinarity and valuing a broad different types of backgrounds
Yes.
for towards degrees. I think this is so interesting and so important right now in higher education.
Right.
it opens up more doors. It places greater value on on important experience and on different kinds of combinations of talent. In some ways, there's a lot of uncertainty with that because we don't have like clear cut little paths that people can follow
Right.
for that. But
Right.
I think it's probably it's the innovation, it's the energy for finding new paths. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with you. Every time I go to a meeting where 90% of the conversation is STEM, I say, wait, hold it. There's other sides of the brain too. Wait a minute, we've got to talk about a full range of activities. People need to write well. They need to analyze. They need to think in very creative ways. And hush hush, I say liberal arts, but indeed there's a role for us, and we really. Like to encourage a multidisciplinary activity partnership among our various colleges. As you know, we have 4 colleges at the university: the law school, um, College of Arts and Sciences, College of Public Affairs, and our business school. And we really encourage across disciplinary or interdisciplinary activity. And we think that that is great for the students. The employers love it because they just see very creative people who can think not only mathematically and analytically, but also can think and create creatively using the skills of the liberal arts. And so we're very proud of the fact that we have a history a department, that we have philosophy and many others, along with our math programs and other scientific activity. I think the professors in our environmental sustainability programs, they really support the ideas that you were talking about. They just said, you've got to, have a sense not only of scientific inquiry, but just thinking about the sustainability of the world. You almost have to be a poet. You have to, just have some sense of greater good. We're all in this together. How we can connectivity and things of that nature, and that you get through these liberal arts and interdisciplinary programs. So I'm very much a proponent. Now it may be also, man, I was a history major, so I have to admit it. I could have never done my roommates were doctors and things of that nature. My wife's an ophthalmologist. No, that wouldn't have been me. Or engineering. I love them. I encourage them. We need them, but we also need a few writers out here, and we that's what we encourage too.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I was thinking about the slogan you used for your when you were mayor of Baltimore, the city that reads.
Yeah,
That's it captures a lot of complexity in a well said statement. And I think so many of our problems we need ways to kind of get our heads around them. We need
yeah,
metaphors, we need stories, we need models. And I think that this is where the combination of the arts and the sciences and things together can go a long way in helping us really grapple with the challenging problems that we face. And
There's a lot of complexity out there, and I believe that the way these interdisciplinary programs help us
yeah,
deal with complexity in life. And
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, if I may, I want to ask one final question here, but it's kind of a big question. So, oh, this past year, not only COVID-19, but the fight for racial justice, the challenges to our democracy, the most the biggest turnout for an election, yet one of the most contested elections ever.
yeah,
And you have this tremendous experience as a political leader, where you've been in the midst of a lot of these challenges as a politician. You also now have all this experience as an academic leader, and I'm wondering what you see as the role of higher education at this time in our history when we are facing these massive challenges and not only challenges that are scientific and that are environmental, but just challenges on how we live together as a community. And I think higher education has a big role to play, but it's not clear exactly what that role is. And I wonder if you have thoughts on where what we should be focusing on as academic leaders to try to really support our democracy and to
Yeah.
try to take us forward.
Well, I really, yeah, I think about this every day, and um, one of the things that I believe very strongly is that our universities have to be a centers of civility. That we really have to promote um, a civil discourse among one another, so that we're talking to each other and not just at each other, that we're not talking past one another, and that we ought to be places where people feel comfortable expressing a wide variety of views. I mean, a couple of years ago, this is before you came to Maryland. I guess you were still in Virginia at the time, but I invited Betsy DeVos to be a speaker for our mid-year graduation. And there was a lot of debate on our campus about that. But as it ended up, the students had their say, the professors had their say. She came, she met with some of the students, she engaged them in differences of opinion. She did that in outside of public view, and then came and gave her speech. And a few people, actually, a couple of students did stand up and turn their back to her, but other than that, um, people were respectful. And following that, I got a lot of comments where people said, this was worth our, at least demonstrating that we could disagree, but do it in a fashion that was not disagreeable, that was not contentious. We heard her, we may disagree, but at least we conveyed a sense that the University of Baltimore is a place that will welcome differing views. And it almost seems as though when you read things that are going on in Congress these days, that people aren't even talking to one another. And we can't move forward as a country if we're not at least willing to engage in civil discussion, agree to disagree, but in a civil manner. That's an important role for higher education, as well as making sure that we have the best brains dealing with some of the most complex problems that the world has ever seen.
Yeah, I really like that. A place for civil discourse, a place to listen and learn. You're right. We've gotten really good at outrage, but we're not very good at civil discourse these
Yeah.
days. So
Got to
yeah,
promote it.
yeah. Well, President Schmoke, Kurt,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. This was a delight to have you today, and I just really enjoyed this conversation so much, and I feel like I've gotten to know you better, and I'm really excited to be partnering with you on the USG campus, and hope for lots of success for your degree programs here.
Well, thank you. Really looking forward to working with you and all your students, and visiting with you in the post-pandemic environment.
We're waiting for you. We can't wait to welcome you, and we'll treat you to a day here. It'll be great. So,
Thanks
all
very
right.
much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.